Okay, how fast should you run your marathon? If you're aiming for sub 3 hours and targeting 4:15 per kilometer pace or 6:52 per mile, but you've raced a 1 hour 22 half marathon, what's your move? Do you go out hard and hope for the best? Or hold back and finish strong? This is one of the most common but critical decisions every marathon runner has to make. In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to find your true marathon pace, not based on charts, not on guesswork, but on the training you've already done and the data you've already collected, and the sessions that you need to be doing now. I'm Grantham, a coach and a professional ultra runner who went from running a marathon in 4 hours and 25 minutes to running a marathon in 2 hours and 21 minutes and representing my country for both the marathon and the ultra marathon. And my second marathon was my first attempt at sub 3. The first half went great, 1 hour 29, and I thought, this is great, I'm on track, I'm gonna do it. The second half was a disaster, and I ended up finishing in 3 hours and 25 minutes, which was an hour quicker than my previous marathon, but a disastrous second half. I'd paced it completely wrong. And my next marathon, my third marathon, even though it was a success relative to my previous 2 marathons, I still had no clue on pacing. I ran the first half in 1 hour 19 and the second half in 1 hour 18 and ran 2 hours and 37 for the marathon. And within 2 or 3 minutes, I knew I'd misjudged it and I knew I'd gone out too easy in that first half. In my fourth marathon, I finally understood and I finally had learned how to pace a marathon and what I was capable of from my training and how to design my training to know exactly what I was capable of on race day and how to build confidence to get to the start line knowing that you can execute the entire distance at the pace that you're aiming for. And then I ran the first half in 1 hour 12:44 and the second half in 1 hour 12 and finished strong to run a 2 hours and 24 marathon and finish strong, which is most important. I got this question from Donnie in the comments, and I know that many people have got exactly the same question. Hi Lee, thanks for all the great info you put out there. I'm aiming for a sub 3 hour for my first marathon this June, going for that 4:15 per kilometer pace. I ran a half marathon of 1 hour 21 and 59 seconds a few weeks back. Do I go for a faster time or do I run steady up until the 32K mark at 4:15 and send it if I feel good? Would appreciate your advice. So first of all, he's in a great place. Brilliant that he's done that half marathon and he's got a relative time to now build upon for the next 5 to 9 weeks before he goes for that sub 3 marathon. But of course he's questioning what time and what pace he can hold for the entire duration. Typically, what happens to runners in this position is they'll put that half marathon time into a running calculator online, and that'll give them the time of anything between 2 hours and 52 and 2 hours and 55. So much faster than that 3 hour mark. And what that can do is brilliant. It boosts confidence and it lets us know that it's within ourselves to be able to hold pace for the entire marathon around about the pace that we wanted to run that sub 3 hour in 4:15 per kilometer or 6:52 per mile. But now we've got an online running calculator telling us that we're capable of a much faster pace. And for 2:52, that would be 4:04 per kilometer or 6:33 per mile. And for 2:55, just 5 minutes quicker than that sub 3 pace, that would be 4:09 per kilometer or 6:41 per mile. So all of a sudden, what we're being told or what we're thinking of doing is trying to get to the start line and run 5 to 10 seconds per kilometer faster or 10 to 15 seconds per mile faster than what we've been training at to prepare for that 2 hour and 59 marathon. Or have we? And this is where it gets interesting, because if you're running your first marathon or it's your first real crack at a marathon where you feel as if you've done the work, you've done the training, and you're confident to go out and attack that sub 3 marathon, then a lot of people just focus on being able to conquer the distance, to being able to run the entire distance of the marathon. And what that generally looks like is a lot of long, slow distance, and from time to time they'll put pace in there, but their pace in their mind will be coming from that midweek interval session and faster running and not necessarily from the long run. And here's where a lot of runners get it wrong. They choose pace based on the marathon time they want to run, not on the training that they've done. But we've got to respect the marathon, and the marathon doesn't care about the time that you want. It cares about the marathon that you've prepared for, the marathon that you've conditioned your body for. So where does your marathon pace come from? So let's think about what I've just said. The marathon doesn't care about what time you want, it cares about what time you've trained for. So if we reverse that, what marathon time do we want? 4:15 per kilometer. And therefore the training is designed with specific runs that are targeting marathon pace and getting you to a point where you're gradually building that marathon volume in training, specifically at the pace and the effort level that you can sustain for the entire distance of the marathon. And of course, like that half marathon, that target is a moving target. Often people will just say, okay, I ran 3:40 or I ran 3:20 or 3:10. I'm going to do the next sensible thing, aim for a sub-3 marathon. And what that can look like, if you think about the extreme, if we were running 3:40 for the marathon and that was an all-out effort, and we now want to run 3 hours and all the training starts working towards that 4:15 per kilometer or 6:52 per mile, of course, we're going to get worn out and injured probably and sick because we're doing too much intensity too soon. And so let's say you've got a simple run, like 25 kilometers with 15 kilometers at marathon pace in the middle. 5 kilometers easy, 5 kilometers on the end easy, middle chunk at marathon pace. That marathon pace is initially at the start of the training where you're at right now. And that's the important part. You've got to start where you are and gradually move towards where you want to get to. And if this is a 13-week project and 3 months from now you're running your dream marathon time, brilliant. It's often that the more gradual you can be with that, the more time that you can spend on this project, the safer you're going to get to your goal. And so initially that 25k long run with 15 kilometers at marathon pace for a 3-hour marathon runner 6 months from now might look like 4:30 per kilometer for that 15 kilometer segment. It might look like 5 minutes per kilometer, and gradually over the weeks, 4:45 per kilometer, 4:30 per kilometer, 4:25 per kilometer, gradually nudging towards 4:15 per kilometer. And remember, you've got the rest of the training. You've got your recovery runs, you've got your easy runs that are accelerating that recovery and getting you to those big sessions, midweek interval session, weekend long run. And that interval session is building pace faster than marathon pace to make that specific segment within inside the specific long run feel easier. So both of those sessions are nudging you forward. If Donnie has just ran that 1:21:59 half marathon and that's coming in at 3:53 pace, it sounds easy to be able to hold 4:15 for the entire duration of a marathon. It's 10% slower and therefore it all sounds manageable. But if we've not done specific chunks within a specific long run at that marathon pace, it's still going to be difficult because you're going to get into that second and third hour and all of a sudden your body can cope for a certain amount of time because of your interval training. You've got way faster than half marathon pace and marathon pace. In the specific long run, you might have done a bit, but you've not done enough. Once we're moving for sustained periods of time over the ground, specifically at marathon pace and on fatigued legs, once we freshen up and do a good taper, my taper is 10 days, just perfect amount of time, freshens up the legs, keeps the zip in the leg, and then I attack the start line. I know at that start line that I'm good if I've done the specific sessions over the weeks and months to be able to put me on that start line confident. So the question for Donnie is, how long can you hold 4:15 per kilometer for? You can hold the half marathon for 3:53. So that would indicate we could probably do 25 to 30 kilometers at least at 4:15 pace. If you want to go faster than that and run 2:55, then how long can you hold 4:09 pace per kilometer for? And how often have you done that? Also crucial. If we want to go even faster and run 2 hours and 52, then how long can you hold 4 minutes and 4 seconds? Now, remember, we've got a really good result there. 1 hour 22 for the half marathon. We've got a marathon that we wanted to run sub 3. We now know we're capable of more. And if we add the finishing touches in the next 5 to 9 weeks, he said at some time in June, then we can put him on the start line confident to execute quite a bit quicker than 3 hour pace. What that result can also do, a good half marathon result this far out, is it can also send you into the headspace of, okay, the calculator says 2 hours 52 to 2 hours and 55, and therefore I want to build confidence at doing a super long run at that 4:04 per kilometer or 4:09 per kilometer, and therefore too close to marathon day, we're running too much at marathon pace. So it's a fine line that we've got to get right. Remember that the goal here is to peak for marathon, not be fatigued on the start line, but to peak to get the very most out of yourself come race day. Here are 3 specific long runs that I would use to test my fitness and to test my pace specifically for the marathon, and know that I could get to the start line and be super confident of executing that pace for the entire duration of a marathon. Session 1, just 5 times 10 minutes. So good warm up, good cool down, but just 5 times 10 minutes with 60 seconds rest in between at 5% quicker than marathon pace. Now, I was always training, almost always in hot conditions to prepare for marathons and ultra marathons. So I would know that if I could just hit pace in that hotter climate, then I would be good. And so when I'm aiming for a 2:20 marathon, 3:20 per kilometer, I know that if I can do 5 times 10 minutes with 60 seconds rest in between at 3:20 per kilometer, I know that I'm good to go on marathon day. So if you can do the same for 4:04 pace or 4:09 pace, that 2:52 to 2:55 marathon, then it's a really good indication. And along with these other specific long runs, it will put you in a good place, confident, ready to execute on the start line. Marathon indication session number 2. I love this session. Very, very simply, we're going to do a progression run of 24 kilometers or 15 miles. All we're going to do is 8 kilometers, 8 kilometers, 8 kilometers, or 5 miles, 5 miles, 5 miles. And we're going to finish that final 8 kilometers or 5 miles at marathon pace. So for you, if that's 4:04, fantastic. If it's 4:09, fantastic. If it's 4:15, that's the pace that it is, and this is a good indication. What the run looks like, or the execution of the run looks like, is a good warm-up. Get your body ready and primed, ready to execute this session. Because remember, we're getting the physical and physiological adaptations and benefits, but we're also building confidence. This is exactly the question and exactly the reason for this type of session. So a good warm-up is going to put us in a good place. It's going to set ourselves up for success for the training run. And then I'd run that first 8 kilometers or 5 miles at marathon pace plus 20%. It's a continuous run, so straight onto that middle 8 kilometers or 5 miles at marathon pace plus 10%, so 10% slower than marathon pace. And then that final 8 kilometers or 5 miles at exactly marathon pace. Now again, great confidence booster and a great indicator as to where you are for the marathon. And how it feels is 20% slower than marathon pace at this time in your training build should feel pretty comfortable, but you're starting, you still need a warm up. You still can't go from nothing to doing that first 20% slower than marathon pace. You want to put yourself in that good position, but it should feel comfortably hard. And then all of a sudden, that middle part, just 10% slower than marathon pace, okay, we're thinking and we're focused and we're ready for it to become marathon pace for that final 8 kilometers or 5 miles. It's such a great run and it's so much fun that I will do that type of run and play around with the distances very frequently. Marathon pace indicator number 3. Now, it doesn't get much better than this. And what I would do is, depending on when that marathon is in June, if it's the first week, then we're only 5 or 6 weeks away. If it's the middle to the end of June, I would typically do this 5 to 8 weeks out. And what it looks like is I'd find a local half marathon. You don't need to do this in a race, but you're going through the motions of racing, disciplined at marathon pace. So running a half marathon at marathon pace. And what the total session looks like, the whole session, is we're doing 4 kilometers easy to begin with. We're doing 4 kilometers at marathon pace plus 20% to begin with, timing it so we get to the start line just on time to start with the other half marathon runners and run that disciplined at marathon pace. So you've got to be disciplined in that. You want to go forward, you want to get competitive, you want to race with other people. Maybe you feel in PB shape. You should do by now, even on fatigued legs. And it's tempting to want to go a minute quicker than that 1:22 half and again boost that confidence. But you've got to be disciplined because this is building that confidence and fatigue resistance specifically for our marathon. So we're running the half marathon at marathon pace, and then the final 5 kilometers at marathon pace plus 10 or 20%. So 10 or 20% slower than marathon pace. And that is tough to do because you're running through the finish line, you're trying not to stop, but you might have to kind of get through the bags, etc., depending on the size of the half marathon, and then you're getting straight back into it. And because you're not in fight or flight mode, the perception or the perceived effort is so much harder. And that's where you really build that marathon runner. Running 10 to 20% slower than marathon pace when you already feel as if you've finished, that's what really caps off that fatigue resistance and also builds that mentality. So should you go out and run 32 kilometers, the start of your marathon at 4:15 pace, and then push on if you feel good? The answer is simple. Follow your training, and for the next 5 to 9 weeks, however long you've got before your marathon, now is the time to not just add the finishing touches, to find what that training is saying, to find what pace you can hold for the entire duration of the marathon. Again, think about the extreme. There are lots of stories where a marathon runner will go and run with their partner, and maybe it's a 2:40 marathon runner, capable of way faster than the marathon time they're going to run with their partner, 3 hours 30 on that day. But because they're not used to running the entire distance of 26 miles or 42K at 5 minutes per kilometer or 8 minutes per mile, all of a sudden they start cramping because they've not used their body in that way. You also get the same stories from people that use super shoes for the first time on marathon day. They get to 25K or 30K or 20 miles, and all of a sudden they start cramping because that stride length is a bit extra, 2 or 3 centimeters more every single step. Imagine what that does to your hamstrings and also your quads when you're landing in a slightly different place with a slightly different stride length repetitively, 180 cadence times 2 hours. Crazy. But when you think about it, you can correct that and have it working for you as a strength. We need to get the body comfortable and robust and conditioned at moving over the ground for long periods of times at marathon pace. You're in a great place right now, Donnie, and I would be super confident. But if you can do the right things over the next 5 to 9 weeks, you're going to be able to run much quicker than 3 hours. And hopefully these 2 videos will help you with the long runs.